What is up, everybody? Welcome into this Thursday episode of Flippin Bats. We got a lot to talk about. I was worried when we came back from All-Star Game that we wouldn't have baseball to talk about. We wouldn't have a ton to talk about. We'd just have to tell you a million more stories about the All-Star Game because there are a million. But it turns out there is a ton to talk about. John Mozeliak of the Cardinals came out talking about all the players they're going to trade. We got Astros to talk about. Are they going to win the American League? Ellie De La Cruz, Barry Bonds, and Pete Rose. Rob Manfred spoke out about Pete Rose and the potential Hall of Fame case for him. Barry Bonds went public speaking out about the Hall of Fame. We got a lot to talk about. This one's going to be a blast. Let's get to it.
Fly ball onto the track, at the wall, it's gone! Home run!
Turns on a ball, deep right field, and gone!
What a game, what a moment. We are back in our studio, back from Seattle. What a blast it was. But Alex, it always feels good to get back home.
I feel like we were there for like a month because we do so much in the matter of like 4 days.
But I also feel like we were there for like
a second.
30 minutes.
But it was so much fun. Like we jam-packed every single part of our day, like going to do things in the morning, like visiting all of the like top places that make Seattle, talking and hanging out with all the legends in Seattle. It was so much fun.
It's always such a blast of an experience. And I just feel like we walked away with more experiences than just the Derby and the All-Star Game. Like everything we got to do, from the Space Needle, that was the very first thing we did, which, by the way, we're on our way to the Space Needle and found out that we went to, quote, the wrong Space Needle to start our day. So in case you're wondering, there are not two Space Needles. We just went
It was
the
terrifying
wrong direction.
and so much fun. And if you're watching, we also went to the gum wall and the fish market with Joel McHale. The gum wall was disgusting, but the story behind it's funny. We'll get into that situation with that giant, the biggest fish that they had in the fish market that he decided just to take a big bite out of. We got to do the red carpet with all of the players day of the All-Star Game.
Corbin Carroll, by the way, Corbin Carroll had never met in person, but he's come on the show, and obviously there's the love and respect I have for him and the leader of his bandwagon. And he comes over, we talk for a while. His dad comes up and says, "Hey."
You mean you in 20 years?
Me in 20 years, which everybody knew about.
Everyone knew about it and
everybody
talked
knew
about
about it. So in case you haven't heard this story, Corbin Carroll was dropped off at the field, a couple months ago, I guess, by his mom and dad. And there were some pictures that went public of him getting dropped off by his parents. And I got no less than 5 comments of like, well, Corbin's dad has been Verlander in 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I did kind of see it. And then on the red carpet, his dad like comes up and was like, "Hey, I really like your trademark of MVPCC." His mom commented on the lookalike thing. It was great. And that was all happening on the red carpet. We saw Kodai Senga, who the photo that came about from Kodai Senga.
I don't know who's more excited.
We're all so happy.
You or me. All of us are like, ah! Like mouth smiles wide open.
It was awesome. Yeah, the fish story with Joel McHale, the gum wall.
The players party we also absolutely crushed, where we got to meet Ken Griffey Jr., Julio Rodriguez, and like really spend some time with them and get to know them and hang out with them.
You know what I learned at the players party?
That you're horrible at photos. I'm sorry, Ben.
That's not what I was. That's not what I was going
I am.
for.
If you're listening, we're showing the selfie of Ken Griffey Jr., Ben, and myself, and Ben just completely blew it in the photo. It's hilarious. It's like, do you forget how to take photos?
I posted
I'm just going to give you a hard
because
time for that forever.
I posted that, and I asked like, what's wrong with me? A lot of people thought I was high, and that's a fair. I've never been high in my life, so
you imagine that's what you would look like.
Certainly, yeah. Also at that party, so Fat Joe performed.
Yep.
And he was incredible.
He was amazing.
But I went around telling everybody that Lil Jon performed.
About as opposite as you can get from Fat Joe, who, like, I forgot that I loved every single one of his songs. It, like, brought me, like, right back to high school. Like, everyone singing along. It was so much fun. Then Jack Harlow came on after him.
Is it really that opposite? They're both a short adjective about weight and size, and the other one is a very common name.
Yes.
Fat Joe, Lil John.
No.
I was confused.
Yeah.
But I knew I didn't know if I knew any of his songs.
You're always, there's confusion.
You're
often.
always confused. Well, she was about to say you're always confused. Let's talk baseball then.
Okay.
Bring it back to
what you do know and what you're not
what
confused
I do know.
about.
But
okay.
honestly, great trip.
Amazing.
I said it when we wrapped up the other night on the field, but there are a lot of people that make that possible. So thank you to everybody that made the All-Star game what it was, and that includes you.
Oh, thanks. And thanks to all of you guys at home that like watched and tuned in and was kind of a part of the experience with us, because that's what we try to do, is bring you along through social, the live shows. So we had a blast.
And now we're back, and you're stuck with us in studio.
And just like that, we're back. So let's get to making a statement, all right? So if you're new to this, I'm going to give Ben some statements. He's going to tell me whether he agrees with them or not, and then give a little explanation to it. So let's get to our first one. Major League Baseball needs to change the every team gets an all-star rule.
So you're asking a guy that could not be more against the participation trophy era.
Yes.
You know, like where every kid gets a trophy. You didn't win a game, but you tried. Here's a trophy. I hate it.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. And I don't like that. So coming from that perspective makes this difficult, what I'm about to say, because I do think in this aspect that every team needs to be represented. And I think the reason for that is the fans.
Oh, 100% for the fans.
Yeah. And I just think I kind of went back and forth on this until I really dove in on this for today's show of like, should everybody be represented? Like, but you don't often have a guy that like isn't a good player at all on a team. So it's not like we're getting like terrible players, but while you're there, you just realize how important it is, I think, for all 30 Major League Baseball franchises to be there representing the sport on a big stage at the Midsummer Classic. And you have all the teams like social media reps. You know, it's more than just a player. You know, teams and social media reps and everybody are there representing an organization. And I just don't think it would feel right if you just completely omitted a team from the All-Star break because they're not a very good team and they don't have a player that's, quote, worthy of being an all-star.
But we also saw the issue is we didn't have some of the biggest names in the games there. Obviously, a lot had to do with injury with Mike Trout and Aaron Judge. But even Ellie De La Cruz, who, like, is new, obviously, just a month or two in the league. I think it was like the lowest watched All-Star game.
No, I just saw something last night. It was up like 6% in the demographic of like 18 to 41, which is the biggest rise since 2017.
So certain demographics it was up, but you didn't have some of the biggest names there, which is hard.
Yeah.
That's obviously a big draw.
Yeah.
And then you get some snubs when you can't have when you have to have a representative from every team.
Yeah, and that is the downfall. But I would ask you, like, if you didn't have a representative from every team, how many of those players wouldn't have made the All-Star game? Maybe 2 or 3. So then is Ellie De La Cruz going to make the No, Ellie didn't make it because he's been in the big leagues for a month, and Tatis didn't make it because people used the suspension against him.
Yeah.
So I don't think if we had those people. If they didn't make the game, I don't think those exciting players that we're talking about would have been the ones to get in. But I just found the tweet I was looking for about the All-Star game. It says Tuesday's MLB All-Star game on Fox averaged over 7 million viewers, continuing to make it the most popular of All-Star games. Saw a 6% increase in the 18 to 49 demo, which is the first time there's been an increase in the critical demographic since 2017.
That's huge.
Which I think is really cool because players in baseball are starting to get younger, more exciting, fun, flipping bats, and fans need to start getting younger. And I think we're starting to see that. Attendance this year is up 8%.
I mean, it was packed. The All-Star game was packed.
The All-Star game is
so many young kids.
But yes.
But you're also having like younger players in the All-Star game as well, and a lot of first-time All-Stars. So I think we're starting to see that shift.
Yeah. I think there needed to be a shift in baseball in terms of who watches, and I think we're starting to see that. And I think the reason we're starting to see that is because of the young, exciting players coming up, and the Ellie De La Cruzes, the Ronald Acuna, the Fernando Tatis, the Juan Sotos, the Yordan Alvarez, like all of those guys are young and exciting. Julio Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah.
So I just think that's starting to change the culture and of the game of baseball, and I think we're starting to see the viewership change as well. Again, 8% increase in fans for the first half. Historic. I ran into an MLB guy there that I knew pretty well, and he sent me some of the stats that I'll have to break out on another show. But the attendance numbers this year have been incredible. And I think a big reason for that is the young stars taking over baseball.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, so do you
I don't think the rule needs to change.
Okay, you don't think it needs to change.
I think everybody needs to be represented.
Okay.
And give them a participation trophy. No, against participation trophies. I really am. So I understand.
All right, that's fair.
What the argument might be here, but I think everybody needs to be represented. I saw so many Tigers fans there, so excited to see Michael Lorenzen, their player from their team. I think that matters.
Okay, that's fair. Let's move on to our next statement. We're getting close to the trade deadline here, so we're getting some news. Nolan Arenado is on the trade block.
Yeah, I mean, 2 days ago I would have said no, but then president of baseball ops for the Cardinals, John Mozeliak, comes out and says players will be traded.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote from there basically said, right now I can tell you we're going to trade people. I just don't know if it's going to be household names or more of guys who are just not likely to be here next year. What's going to transpire between now, July 13th, and July 31st that makes him say, like, okay, we're going to trade the household names? The Cardinals stink. They do. And a big reason why is him, by the way. So maybe he's grasping for straws here, hoping they turn it all around. But this has been a failure from the very beginning. And he's a huge reason why. You want to talk about coming into this year and how competitive you're going to be. Well, you put a pitching staff together that had no chance of being competitive. And you just look back at some of the things he said, and it's just like this season had no chance. In an interview the night of the All-Star game, he said, we went into this season thinking Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, and Lars Nootbaar would be our everyday outfield. Jordan Walker started on opening day in the outfield. How can you go out and say something like that when there were no... Lars Nootbaar ended up starting in the outfield that game, and it wasn't because of injuries. So he wanted to say that was what was going to happen. Well, it didn't happen on opening day. I don't think the mindset is right here at all in the Cardinals organization. And it was a month or so ago, I went off on the whole handling of this season and years past for the Cardinals and how they've treated players on the field, players off the field, Ali Marmol just being a pawn for how to put his players on the field. So I really think I would say you have to clean house, but I would say it has to be John Mozeliak. I mean, Is Nolan Arenado the problem in St. Louis? No, he's not. And I would also argue that neither is the offense. I would argue that it's the pitching staff that he put together that he's somehow expected to be competitive when nobody on planet Earth besides him expected them to be a top of the league rotation. I don't understand. But Arenado was asked about this, and he said it's a business, right? I've been traded once. I think that shocked a lot of people at that time. I guess it doesn't surprise me anywhere what happens in this game. It would still be surprising seeing some things happen, but I understand there are certain things that probably should.
I mean, it's tough when your team is last place in the NL Central. There are 11 and a half games behind the first place Cincinnati Reds. They are 14 games under 500. And this was a team that had a pretty incredible end to last season. I mean, they lost a couple big names, but it's disappointing.
Rounding back to the question.
Okay.
I'm going to say, is he on the trading block? Sure. I mean, sure, of course. What can you get for him? I would say he's probably not going to get traded. I think we probably see some names go, some big names. I don't think it should be just like, oh, guys that wouldn't be here next year. He just kind of brushed that off as if it wasn't a big deal, which there are some big names that aren't currently supposed to be there next year. So I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but I don't think we see Nolan Arenado moved.
All right.
Just a gut feeling.
Okay. Let's move on to our next statement. You'll like this one. The Astros are the team to beat in the American League.
Yeah. I mean, I had them in the World Series this year, and I don't think anything's happened to this point to make me change that. I mean, they're not winning the AL West right now, but it's because the Rangers, for a large part of the year, have been one of the best teams in baseball.
But they're not far behind.
We're seeing them fall back to earth a little bit.
Yeah.
We're seeing the Astros do really what they constantly do. Like, this is what the Astros have done for the better part of a decade. And over the last 5 years, nobody's been more successful than them. Over the course of this past decade, arguably, nobody's been more successful than them. So, and this is what we see them do every year. They just kind of coast. It's kind of like a roller coaster of a season. You look up and they're still well above 500. They're right there in range of passing the Rangers in the AL West. They just beat the Rangers 3 out of 4 in that big series and the Silver Boot series. And yeah, I don't see any reason to believe that they would not be the team to beat in the American League. And actually at the All-Star game, our newest co-worker on the MLB on Fox crew, Derek Jeter, they asked him who he thought the team to beat in the American League was, and let's listen to that clip.
Look, people are going to talk about pitching, they're going to talk about hitting, they're going to talk about defense. I still think the Houston Astros are the best team built for the postseason in the American League because they have experience. And you can't say enough about having experience of being there before. And I think once they get to the postseason, which everyone expects them to, that's when they're actually relaxed. And the number one reason for that is Dusty Baker.
A lot of things he said there, I agree with. The one thing I would disagree with is at the end when he says the number one reason is Dusty Baker. I would argue the number one reason is Jose Altuve, Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, the core that has been there for a while during this dynasty, almost dynasty, if you will.
One more, then you can call them a dynasty.
You'll keep saying that.
I will.
Forever.
You need 3.
They're a dynasty.
Okay? No.
We're in the. They've been to 5 of.
You got to win.
They are.
You got to win the World Series more than twice. 3 times.
It says,
then we'll talk about
who
dynasty.
made that rule? You're making that rule.
We'll take a poll, okay? We'll take a poll. What's
People
considered...
hate the Astros. Everybody's going to vote against it.
No, just what is considered a dynasty? 2 or 3 plus? I think it's 3 plus. I'm standing by that. It's got to be 3 plus.
If we in baseball
a
don't want to call a team that has been to 6 consecutive ALCSs and all of these World Series a dynasty, then we're never going to call a team a dynasty.
It takes a lot. That's a very high pedestal, and I think it takes a lot to be able to call that. They're a great team with a great core.
They're a dynasty.
Yep.
If
they win,
again,
they win
the
more.
core is in my opinion,
okay,
their number one reason why. Not Dusty Baker, who I love Dusty Baker.
We all love Dusty
Baker. He
Baker.
is a huge reason. But everything else I do agree with from Jeter. The experience, that's massive in the playoffs, and nobody understands that better than Derek Jeter. They would get to the playoffs, and the Yankees get in, and they expect to win. Everybody else expects them to win. The teams they're playing probably deep down think like these are the New York Yankees. They've been here. They're a juggernaut. They were a dynasty.
Yeah.
And I hearing him say that is exactly right. I'm not veering at all from my American League pick to get to the World Series. I truly believe they're the team best built. You look at the teams above them right now in the American League, and it's the Rangers, the Rays. Would I pick the Rangers or the Rays over the Houston Astros to get to the World Series? I absolutely wouldn't. I think the Astros are still the team to beat in the American League. And I would add, Alex, by the way, do you remember my preseason World Series prediction?
Yep, you had the Astros and the Braves, right?
I feel great about that.
I know you do.
I mean, the Braves are right now. The Braves
I feel
are the
good
best
about
team
the Braves
in baseball.
now.
The Braves are the best team in baseball. So I'm gonna keep rolling on with my World Series prediction and say that Astros is the team to beat. Would you have a World Series prediction right at this current moment? You said Braves, right? Would you take the Braves in the NL?
I would take the Braves. Depends what happens at the trade deadline here. I want to see if the Dodgers make any moves, what's going to happen there. That's always kind of like the sneaky team.
Yeah, if the Dodgers get 18 pitchers, you're right.
Yeah.
They're going to
But
be
yeah, right now,
there.
definitely Braves. Braves are the best team in the National League.
You so badly don't want to say it. This is great.
I don't. I'm like, I'll go Tampa Bay maybe. Like,
Yeah.
But who knows? Yeah, maybe one of the Texas teams.
Yeah, this is what
you
I
can't
imagine.
make an LA girl like just. I can't do it. It's hard. It's really hard on my soul.
Yeah.
Let's move on though, okay? Because this next one makes my soul really happy. Our next statement: Ellie De La Cruz is Major League Baseball's next superstar.
Yeah, absolutely he is. And I think we've seen some players come up that I think it wouldn't be fair to compare them all like right now and pick one superstar over another in terms of Julio, who I don't think when it comes to Julio, I don't think experiencing that All-Star week in his city and him being on that stage and getting to know him, like that guy is the definition of a superstar and the perfect face for the game of baseball. And there are so many young, talented guys that I think are the future of baseball. You know, the guys, I mentioned them earlier, Ronald Acuna, Fernando Tatis, Corbin Carroll.
Yeah.
I'm missing probably many. Adley Rutschman. I could go on and on and on. But Ellie is absolutely a future superstar of this sport. I mean, the Cincinnati Reds are 23-8 since he came up.
Oh, he completely turned their season around
Yeah.
and made them a team that now fans, if you're not even a Reds fans, want to tune in and watch his game, which that's a
big
superstar
difference.
right there. If you can draw an audience that isn't your fan base audience, you are a superstar.
I mean, there aren't often clips that go viral around the sports world that come from the Cincinnati Reds.
No.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just a smaller market team. And for what Ellie De La Cruz did the other day, getting on base, RBI single, then stealing second, third, and home all within 2 pitches, that went wild. I think everybody that knows anything or cares at all about sports.
It was talked about on every single daily sports show.
Yeah.
Like all sports shows, which don't get a lot of baseball coverage all the time. And I got to be honest, people who are talking to me about baseball right now, the 2 things they want to talk about are Shohei Ohtani and Ellie De La Cruz.
Yep. And that's
insane. If you're that's the company you're in right now.
They did. There was a commercial recently that had multiple sports involved.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a baseball commercial. There was a commercial that had superstar athletes in it. There was a soccer player, Alex Morgan, football player, Odell Beckham, and they had a baseball player. That baseball player was Ellie De La Cruz. And he's been in the big leagues for a month. Like, he's moving the needle on the sport of baseball and who's watching and who's paying attention. Exactly. Ellie De La Cruz is already a superstar, and the future is very, very bright for him. On June 5th, they were 5.5 games out of first place with a 2.2% chance to make the playoffs. Today, they have a 1-game lead in the division with a 34.6% chance to make the postseason.
I mean,
that's a big part of that is Ellie De La Cruz.
He is. The moment he came up, you said it. They are 23-8 since he came up.
Yep.
He is the reason. He is the spark. He brings the energy. He leads by example on the field. This is special, and we're lucky. Baseball's lucky that we're getting another young superstar like this.
Absolutely. Also, with the Reds, he is I would say a big reason. But Matt McClain, Spencer Steer, like these young guys they have up and are doing good things.
One of the best rookie cores in baseball
I think
right
there's multiple reasons, but Ellie's a big one.
All right, moving on to our next statement. This is the hottest topic right now and probably will be until the trade deadline. Shohei Ohtani will be traded.
I mean, my answer.
Like what should be done and what will happen?
Yeah, they're 2 different questions.
Two different questions.
The statement, Ohtani will be traded, I'm going to say no. I'm going to disagree. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. Last week, 2 weeks ago, was very vocal about, you need to get something. And for Artie Moreno, or for Ken Rosenthal speaking about Artie Moreno, saying he doesn't want to be known as the owner that trades away Shohei Ohtani, I would rather be known as the owner that got something for Shohei Ohtani than the owner that let him walk for nothing. So, look, you might say, like, you might wake up and really punch yourself for if you trade Shohei.
Yeah.
I would be more beat up over the fact that we could have this. It's not even a generational talent. It's a once in a
Lifetime.
Even more. Like,
the game.
Once in the game
Yeah.
kind of player. And there's a realistic possibility that he walks away and the Angels have done nothing and gained nothing besides money for the owner and a compensation pick. Like, sick, you know?
Yeah, this is tough because I was also very vocal about this on this show and on The Herd a couple weeks ago, that I think it would be a silly business move, like you, not to trade Shohei Ohtani and get something in return. But then I've been thinking about the other side, a lot of it, and why wouldn't they if they didn't? And he is the best player in the game. Hands down, best player of our generation, as you said, best maybe we've ever seen. There's nothing like him. Wouldn't you want to do everything in your power to try to keep that player on your team when you have it? He is not only the face of the franchise, he is the brand of the Angels. He is all of the advertising for the Angels. He is all the giveaways for the Angels. He is your main moneymaker. So I'm just putting my Angels hat on as to why they wouldn't do that. Because again, I'm not saying I agree with it, but why they wouldn't. And it has to be because you have to try to do every possible thing in your power to try to keep the best player in the game on your team and on your franchise. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm not very optimistic that it's going to happen. But if maybe they can stay kind of not super far out of the wild card race and Mike Trout comes back at the end of the season, maybe they make a push for the postseason and maybe they can keep Shohei Ohtani. I don't think it's likely, but that's the other hard side.
They're milking him for everything they can until he's gone. That's why they're not going to trade him. We're going to see a million Shohei giveaways in the second half of the season. We're going to see him, they're just milking him for everything they can, every dollar they can get, every fan they can get in the stands because of him. And they're going to ride that out until the very end. And then they're not going to pay him the money that he's going to get. And that's how this is all going to end. And Angels fans should be pissed off about it.
Isn't that a bad investment, though, when you're thinking about it? Like, let me just get the fast cash real quick right now, instead of thinking of the long-term investment of, okay, I can get some young guys, we can build our franchise, and then in 5 years, maybe we can get back to where we want to be. Because they've had the two best players in the game, and obviously we've seen they can't figure out how to win with both of them.
Well, I guess then the question becomes, where do you want to be? Do you want to be a winner or do you want to make money? And that's not a question for me. That's a question for Artie Moreno, but he's doing just fine. He's making money. He's getting fans in the seats.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the question for the players. And I've always said, that is the player's choice. A lot of players like to just take the money, get as much money as you can, because as an athlete, you have a very small window of making money. Or do you want to take less money and try to build around and build a team and win championships? Kind of like we saw with a Tom Brady.
Yeah, that gets tricky.
I
don't think players shouldn't have to take less money. Ownerships that are billionaires should be asked to, if you want to win. And I'm not saying I'm not saying every team needs to do what Steve Cohen has done.
Oh, they can't.
True, but a player shouldn't say well, I want to be on a winning team, so I should take less money. A player is worth what a player is worth, right? And there's going to be a bidding war for players, and the Angels aren't going to be close to the bidding war for Shohei Ohtani because Artie Moreno, I don't think will fork over the money for him. I think he's milking him for all he's worth right now and getting all the money he can, and he doesn't want to give up on that on July 31st. He wants to ride that out through October 5th or whatever it is, and have a million giveaways with Shohei and sell out or get more fans in the crowd because of all those giveaways. And then when he goes, and they won't have that massive contract on the books that he has to pay. It's frustrating, but Angels fans should be pissed. It's frustrating.
It is. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to our next statement, our final statement here, which we have both been very vocal about before. Barry Bonds and Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame?
So the reason this is a pertinent topic, if you will.
A trending topic right now.
Rob Manfred over the All-Star break was talking about Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, and Barry Bonds was on a podcast talking about his want and willingness to be in the Hall of Fame and why he isn't in the Hall of Fame, which I honestly thought was a very good and interesting conversation. And I've been very vocal about how Barry Bonds, in my opinion, is the greatest hitter to ever play baseball and how he should be a Hall of Famer, because the Hall of Fame, as it currently the Hall of Fame is a museum of the greatest baseball players of all time. To not have Barry Bonds in that museum of the greatest baseball players of all time is absolutely ridiculous.
It's silly.
But I haven't heard Barry Bonds speak out about it very often, and he did in a podcast within the last couple of days. So let's share a clip of that now.
You know, people have to understand something, is that the fact of is that I was vindicated. I went to the court. I was in federal court, and I won my case 100%. Where is the vindication of me in my own sport? That's what bothers me.
So it's interesting. And then he also went on to say that he wholeheartly believes he should be in the Hall of Fame. He wants to be in, and there he said he feels like he's been vindicated. It's, for me, look, I'm not going to – that seemed to sound like he's saying, like, I'm innocent. I was vindicated. I don't think there's many people out there that think he didn't do steroids at some point in his career, right?
Yeah.
However, I do think he should be a Hall of Famer. And, you know, all of everything he said there is true. But even if, right? Barry Bonds did steroids. He's a Hall of Famer. He was a 3-time MVP before he was ever caught taking steroids, before he was ever believed to be on steroids with the Pirates. He was having a Hall of Fame career, and I'm not saying any of that makes it okay. And I'm not justifying cheating. He did.
But that was also the era, and I'm sure there are so many players in the Hall of Fame that also did steroids but just didn't get caught, because that's what everybody did at that point during baseball.
The majority of pitchers he was facing
were also
doing
on steroids.
The greatest at bat, I think one of, if not the greatest at bat we've ever seen in the history of baseball, was Barry Bonds against Eric Gagne, and they were both juiced out of their absolute minds. Okay? And whether we like it or not, what saved baseball is Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa in 1998 on their home run chase, and they were also roided out of their minds. But there was an era in baseball that we now call the steroid era. Yeah. Should we just completely omit that from the Hall of Fame? No. I've said this a million times at this point. Put a wing in the Hall of Fame that acknowledges the steroid era, but say these were the best of the best in that era and acknowledge what happened at that time. Look at what happened in 1998 with McGwire and Sosa. Look at what Barry Bonds did over the course of his career. Look at what Roger Clemens did over the course of his career. There are so many players that aren't there that should be there, and Barry Bonds, to me, is at the very top of the list because there has never been a better hitter in baseball history than Barry Bonds.
I agree wholeheartedly, 100%.
Oh, Pete Rose.
Oh, go to Pete Rose.
Okay.
What do you think about Pete Rose?
So you asked about Pete Rose because Rob Manfred said over the he had a meeting or
a press conference.
Yeah, that's what the people call it. Correct. Yep. He had a press conference where he talked about Pete Rose and the potential of being a Hall of Famer. And what he said about Pete Rose is that Pete Rose violated what is Rule 1 in baseball. And the consequences of breaking Rule 1 are in the rule. We continue to abide by our own rules. Betting on baseball, banned for life.
Yeah.
Correct? That's what he's referring to there. So your question and the statement of Barry Bonds and Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, I believe, are two different arguments. Pete Rose is the all-time hits leader in baseball. I actually do not believe Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame until he is unbanned from baseball. Barry Bonds was on the ballot. You could have voted for Barry Bonds. So the reason he didn't get in is because the gatekeepers of the Hall of Fame decided to say, hey, I'm not going to vote for you. but they could have. Pete Rose was not possible to vote for. He's currently banned from the game of baseball. Should he be unbanned? And the reason this question was brought up is because of baseball and sports in general relationship with gambling and all of these platforms that we're seeing, leagues partnering with gambling and all of that stuff. So that's why it was brought up to him. And he said that he violated Rule 1. And by the way, a player right now, if they did the same thing, would violate Rule 1.
Yeah.
And they'd be banned for life. So I'm not going to be the one to unban him. If Pete Rose ever gets unbanned from baseball, I would say he should be a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
But as of right now, he's banned, and he was rightfully so banned. And he had a great career, sure, but I think they're two separate. I think Barry Bonds absolutely should be, and I think Pete Rose, he's banned from baseball. What do you want me to say? I mean, he couldn't get voted in.
Yeah, and it's not the only sport that does this. We're seeing NFL players right now get suspended and banned for the season for gambling. So it's just a tricky situation right now because sports betting is legal and so many sports betting platforms are partnered with the leagues and teams and broadcasts.
But
so
you can't bet on.
I know.
You can't bet on. And even
I get it.
Calvin Ridley was betting on other teams when he was hurt.
Yeah.
You know, like Pete Rose was betting on his teams to win.
Yeah.
That does make it a little better in my mind. It's not like he was like throwing games and betting on the other team.
Betting on himself.
But you were betting on your own team in the sport that you play and manage in.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You just can't.
That wraps up our making a statement. And now we're going to do a new kind of little segment up here at the wall.
New-ish.
We've
been doing it, but.
New-ish.
What are we? Oh.
Our top 5 teams.
Yeah, this is
outside
new.
looking in. I'm like, am I getting this wrong?
We're
No.
doing X Factors.
That's
tomorrow.
No, not that. So.
I will say, Alex, when we were preparing for this show, I think this is a good note. We were preparing for this show and going over it before, and we were talking to our producers. Alex said, what are we standing for? Referring to like when we get up on the stage, which we now are. And I said, we stand for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's what we're up here doing, Alex. We're standing for that and for this segment.
We're standing for that and for the 5 teams that are on the outside looking in that you think right now they're not quite in that playoff picture, but at the end of the regular season, you believe they could or should have a chance to get in. So let's get started with your first team.
Yes.
Who do you have?
My first team on this list is the New York Yankees. They are currently just out of a wild card spot. I think when all is said and done, the Yankees will end up getting in, and that is because I believe Aaron Judge will be back. We heard the rumors over the All-Star break that he could be back very shortly after the All-Star game, and those are rumors. Brett Boone is the one that said that, noted brother of Aaron Boone, manager of the Yankees, but also added that it did not come from his brother. But if he's back soon, the Yankees are going to get hot. The Yankees are going to get into the playoffs. I do believe that.
Yeah.
So also a note on all of this. We have 5 teams.
Yes.
The way this is set up, I don't think all 5 can make the playoffs. If one makes it, like that probably means another's not going to. This is just 5 teams currently on the outside that I do believe can get into the playoffs.
Okay, that's fair.
And the first is the Yankees.
That's fair. Let's move on to team number 2, the Brewers.
Yeah, I think the Brewers are going to win the NL Central. I do. I would love the Reds too. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be exciting. I think it'd be great to have Ellie De La Cruz in the playoffs. I think the Brewers are going to be the team that ends up overtaking them. They're currently in second. I believe a game behind them.
One game behind the Reds and a half a game out of the National League wildcard spot.
Yeah, so I think the Brew Crew can get in. I think their pitching staff is a big reason why. Dominant closer back into the bullpen. And can they do enough offensively? I think the answer, I think we're going to have to see what they do at the trade deadline, which last year at the trade deadline, it was the exact same conversation. What can they do to improve their team? And what did they do? They traded away one of, if not the best closer in the game of baseball, which was not a good idea. Do they do that this year? They have, again, one of the best closers in the game of baseball, and Devin Williams. What are they going to do? Well, hopefully it's not trade him. Hopefully it's add some bats to that lineup. And if they can, they'll be in the playoffs.
All right. Number 3, the Phillies.
Look, last year's NL champion, the pennant winner in the National League last year. They're still right there on the cusp. Do you have the number of exactly how far out they are?
They're 12 games behind the Braves.
No,
but
not the division.
Half a game out of the NL wildcard spot.
Note.
Yes.
The division is done.
Yes.
The Atlanta Braves are going to be the NL East champion. Now, the question becomes, who gets in also from the NL East? The Phillies are 23-7 in their last 30, winning at a 767 clip. That's a great run.
It is.
They're playing much better. I think this is the offense we expected from them when they got Trey Turner and they were going to have Bryce Harper coming back and Nick Castellanos is an all-star and they have Kyle Short. The offense is certainly a playoff offense. What can you get from the pitching staff? You have Wheeler, you have Nola, and I mentioned earlier when we did X factors for the NL East, Ranger Suarez for me is a huge piece for them, and he's been pitching much better. The Phillies are a playoff team, and I do believe that they can get in.
They definitely have the pieces, and they're tied right now with a half a game out with the Brewers for the wild card race.
Yeah.
So this is what you're saying. Like, we don't know if we're going to see all these teams in the postseason.
I would argue so far we have. I think I think the Brewers
are
win a division winner.
Got it.
I think the Phillies can be a wild card team.
All right, let's move on to number 4, the Twins.
I think the Minnesota Twins are the best team in the AL Central. And that doesn't mean they're one of the best teams in the league because the AL Central is poopy. But I think the Twins are the better of the two teams. I think the offense is good enough. I think Carlos Correa has not had a year. I think he will have a better second half. He typically does. And then when it comes to crunch time, he's one of the best in the business at stepping up for his team. I think the pitching staff has surprised a lot of people. Sonny Gray, awesome, by the way, and I love talking to him. He was so
great.
Grateful to be there. Again, it was his third time, but as he said to me, all spread out 4 years. So, like, the way it's set up has been, like, early career, mid-career, and later in his career, he's made an all-star team. He's been fantastic. Pablo Lopez has been a good addition, also an all-star. Joe Ryan is nasty. I think of everybody in the AL Central, the Minnesota Twins are the most complete team, and I think they can end up winning the division, not get in via a wild card.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that far. They're half a game behind Cleveland right now, and then 5 games out of the wild card. Yeah. Okay, let's move to our last team, which got a lot of work to do if they want to do this. The New York Mets.
The New York Mets are my 5th and final team that I believe can get into the playoffs. Why, Alex?
Why?
Well, because they're so talented. And then we finally saw them go on a 6-game win streak to end the first half. They ended up closing the gap a little bit. Now, they lost, not to end the first half. They ended up losing the last 2 games of the first half. But they finally went on a stretch. They're playing better baseball. Justin is pitching well. They're going to get healthier. Jose Quintana coming back at some point soon. He was on a rehab assignment. Lindor has really heated up. So you have these guys that were really underperforming on the team that are now starting to perform at the rate that you would expect them to. Lindor has been playing like an all-star lately and like one of, if not the best shortstop in baseball over the last few weeks. He's been fantastic. So they got a lot of work to do.
I
understand
so much work to do. And we've heard Steve Cohen say they might be sellers at the trade deadline. So I think a lot is going to come to the surface pending how they do these next 2 weeks. Are they going to go on a winning streak? Are they just going to keep their 18 and a half games behind the Braves in 4th place in the NL East? I'm just going to keep saying the numbers. 7 games out of the National League wild card. Like, they are bad right now, which is, I don't think anyone thought we would say this about the Mets at the start of the season after seeing who they got, what they were going to do. There were such high expectations. So it's all going to depend what they do at the trade deadline. Are they going to try to build and go for it again for that wild card spot? Or are they going to sell and just kind of start to restructure for next season?
The reason I say this, and honestly, it's Mets and Padres are in the exact same boat. They are both super talented, spent a lot of money on their team, and have really underperformed. Yeah. And the Padres actually are, I believe, 1 game ahead of them in the wild card race. I just think I saw what everybody was at least expecting of the Mets all year long in the last 2 weeks of the first half is them finally putting it together and going on a good stretch of games and at least closing the gap in the wild card race. There are still plenty of teams ahead of them. But they're 7 games out of a playoff spot. Is that impossible? Absolutely not. The Atlanta Braves were 10 games behind the Mets in the division last year with like not much time to go, and we all know how that ended up turning out. So I really think I think they can do it. Is it likely? Maybe not.
I think you have to have this opinion because your brother's on the team.
I absolutely don't have to have this opinion.
And it's tough.
And I don't have this opinion. I don't have this opinion because my brother. I don't have the opinion because my brother. Well, I do have it because he's on the team because he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. But I'm not having this opinion because it's my brother. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Justin, over the last 2 months, has been back to pitching.
He's the reigning Cy Young winner.
And he's pitching like that.
Yeah,
and he's pitching like that lately. When he wasn't at the beginning of the year. And then you have Lindor. Like, I'm not saying.
They have the pieces.
Well, yes.
They just aren't performing.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
Yeah. So I think they can do it.
Okay.
Yankees, Brewers, Phillies, Twins, Mets.
You said not all of them are going to make it, but you think they should.
There's a realistic possibility. I mean, the NL wild card, do you have who's in the NL wild card right now? The 3 teams that would be in? I believe
Just
it's
give me a second.
Marlins.
Focus on Ben. Let me get it.
Hold up. Let me get it. Marlins, Giants? No.
We're getting it.
Marlins.
Hold on. Wild card in the National League.
Marlins, Dodgers.
No. So leaders right now are Atlanta, Dodgers, Reds.
Yeah, Marlins,
Wild
D-backs.
card is Miami, Arizona, San Francisco.
San Francisco. It is. Okay.
Yeah. That's who's in it right now.
And just imagine, like, Marlins, D-backs, and Giants. Can they keep this up all year long?
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, that's going to vastly depend on these Phillies and Mets. They're vastly depending on 2 of those 3 dropping out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out us for just the mid-segment switch on the stage.
Is he going to do a good dance with me? I was just going to go for it. I was like, you followed well. I didn't want to block your Mets logo. I figured you should have walked over towards it.
We nailed it.
That was good.
We're
getting
the
used
camera
to the stage.
switched too. We did great.
I know. If you're listening and not watching, we're still getting used to our standing element of all of this. But let's wrap up the show with some Twitter questions.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Yes.
Our TQs. I know you like that. Okay. Our first one comes from Yotaro, and his question is, what do you think are Shohei's top priorities in choosing his next team? Please rank below. Money, winning, location, fans, other factors.
Money, winning, location, fans, and other factors.
It's behind you
what
as
are
well.
his priorities? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Keep this up here. Okay, great. His priorities for his next team. Okay, so I will say number 1, winning.
Yep.
Number 2, I'm actually going to say, I think location.
Same. That was mine.
3, I'm going to go money.
Yep.
4, fans, and 5 other factors.
That was my exact same order. Yep, same page.
Okay.
All right. On to our next question. This one comes from Danny. Do you believe that being the bases are bigger, it lessens, it's up here. The accomplishments of certain stats like stolen bases. So a 40-40 season isn't as impressive as it was in the past, right?
Yeah. Short answer is absolutely yes. It does diminish it to a degree. We are going to see more 40-40 seasons going forward. There haven't been many players ever to do it. I believe it's 4, and one person has done it twice.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to see it more. And the truth of the matter is there are a lot more stolen bases in the game right now because of the way the rules are set up. But that's kind of how baseball has been throughout history, right? Like there are plenty of stats we still talk about when the mound was 50 feet away.
Yeah.
You know, like the game has forever evolved. And there will have to be a note of, we're going to look back in 100 years when I'm 131 years old and we'll be talking about stolen bases and say, like, important note, in 2023, the bases were bigger, so the distance between first base, second base, every base were shorter, and that affected stolen bases. So, yes, I absolutely think it affects it affects it. Does it diminish the accomplishment a little bit? I think absolutely. It has to. Mm-hmm. It won't mean the same thing that it's meant over history so far, and that's okay. It is okay that that's happening because these things, I think, these new rules, I think are better for the game.
That's fair. We got one more fan question. I like this one. Favorite food during All-Star Week?
We'll both answer this. My answer, actually, yes. My answer is, should we go for just the All-Star Week? I'm answering the steak that I had the last night in Seattle. It was at Ascend in Seattle, and it was the best steak that I've ever had.
Same. It was recommended to us by Julio Rodriguez when we were talking to him at the Players Party. We're like, what is your favorite place to go? He said Ascend. My other favorite is the fish market when I had the crab legs. And
where are these pictures coming? Did you take these?
I took these. I take food photos because I want to remember
Phone eats
something
first.
My mom and sister are chefs, so we also have a family group text of like the best food that we've had, and we share it there.
Phone eats first.
So, well, the joke in my family is the phone eats first.
That's what I was literally just saying. And I've never heard you say that. I've said that for...
Oh, yeah. Always. The phone eats first. Just give it a moment. Let me get a good photo. And then, like, let's go. I'm not, like, necessarily posting them all, but we share them in our family. And then I want to remember and look back and, like, salivate on, like, how delicious that meal was. It was incredible.
Yeah. So
it was incredible.
my steak the last night was the best thing I ate.
I think we said it was the best steak we've ever had. We both compared it to steaks we've had in other countries.
I had a steak in Japan years ago that was forever my number one until that.
And mine was in 2019 in Reims, France, when I was there for the World Cup, which is the Champagne region, which was like the most insane setting with champagne and the steak, and that was the best steak I've ever had in my life. This one just one-upped it. Ascend in Seattle, which
I could have picked anything. The Wagyu beef tartare was incredible.
Insane. It was so good.
Great. But we're not even talking about things from the stadium. Do we even eat at the stadium?
Crab legs at the stadium.
Crab legs.
We did only in Seattle.
We were missing butter on this. Anyway, we could go down.
That was a blast. It was so yummy.
It was a blast.
We ate well.
If you're in Seattle, go to Ascend. The night we were there, King Griffey Jr. was there.
Yeah, Cal Ripken Jr. was also there.
Cal Ripken Jr. was there. Shohei was there.
Julio Rodriguez. Like, everyone went there. Apparently, that is the place. And I'm so happy that we got the inside scoop on that and got to go
great.
because it lived up to all of the hype.
Yep. All right, we are back in studio, back from Seattle, and that is our first Thursday episode back here in Los Angeles. What a blast of a week it has been. We will also have our episode tomorrow, so make sure you check that out as well. But for now, thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe to anywhere you listen to your podcast. We're also all on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, at Flippin Bats Pod for all of them. So thank you for listening to this Thursday episode of Flippin Bats. Until tomorrow, my friends.